Some minds don't sleep, they remember.
Look at your wallet, the colorful pieces of paper, the flickering numbers on your banking app. We call it money, use it to buy food, pay rent, build our lives. But what if I told you it was all a lie? Fragile pact, held together by something more brittle than glass? Trust. Trust that the bank will return the money you deposit. Trust that the government won't print trillions more, making everything you own worthless overnight. But that trust has shattered before, and it will shatter again. In 2008, the world witnessed a crack in that pact. The banks, those castles of financial faith, crumbled like sandcastles before a tsunami. Millions lost their homes, their jobs, their futures. The leaders of the system, the banks, the governments, said they would fix everything. But how do you fix a system built on a lie? And then from the ashes of the crisis, a ghost appeared. Not a person, not an organization, but an idea. An idea written in code, needing no banks, no governments, no trust. It was called Bitcoin. This isn't a story about getting rich quick. This isn't a story about overnight millionaires. This is a story about a digital prophecy, about a world where money is no longer a tool of the powerful, but a weapon for the free. Welcome to the day of reckoning for currency. Hit subscribe and join me as we step into the heart of the collapse and the digital life raft that might be our last hope. The source code, Satoshi and the anonymous spark. Imagine a dark room, illuminated only by the cold blue glow of a computer screen. A figure sits there, fingers flying across the keyboard, writing the lines of code that would shake the world. They have no name, no face, no identity. They are a ghost, an anonymous spark, but the fire they ignited would burn for centuries. Welcome to the source code, where the story of Bitcoin begins, not in the skyscrapers of banks or the boardrooms of governments, but with a simple email sent in the darkness of Halloween 2008. In the opening, we saw the global financial system collapse, trust in paper money shattering like a sandcastle before a tsunami. But from those ashes, a digital prophecy was born, and behind it was a name, Satoshi Nakamoto. Who is Satoshi? A genius, a rebel, a group of anonymous people, or just an idea in human form? Tonight we begin the journey to find this ghost, the person who created Bitcoin, to change the way we think about money, and then vanished into thin air, leaving behind a mystery that haunts the world. Let's turn back time to October 31st, 2008, while children dressed up as ghosts. Knocking on doors for candy, in a dark corner of the internet, a digital ghost was also wearing a mask. An email was sent to a small mailing list of cryptographers, the cypherpunks. Rebels who believed that cryptography could free humanity from the control of powerful institutions. The email was short, humble, but carried the potential power of a nuclear explosion. The sender identified themselves as Satoshi Nakamoto. The content was brief. I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer, with no trusted third party. Attached was a 9-page PDF titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Imagine you were one of the cryptographers who received that email. Perhaps you would have scoffed. Digital money? Dozens of such projects had failed before, from DigiCash to eGold. All had collapsed under the weight of central banks, regulations, or simply a lack of trust. But then you open the PDF, you read every line, and you realize that this is no ordinary idea. This is a brutally elegant solution to a seemingly impossible problem. How to create a digital currency that cannot be copied, cannot be counterfeited, and requires no bank or government to verify transactions. Satoshi had done it. A few months later, on January 3rd, 2009, the Bitcoin network officially came to life. The Genesis block, the very first block of transactions on the blockchain, was mined. And within this block, Satoshi left an indelible mark, a message hidden in the code, like a message to the future. The times 3, Jan 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This message wasn't just a time stamp. It was a political protest. At that time, the world was reeling from the financial crisis. The big banks, institutions once considered too big to fail, had pushed the global economy to the brink. Governments pumped trillions of dollars to save them, while millions of people lost their homes, jobs, and hope. By embedding the headline from the Times into the Genesis block, Satoshi declared, "Bitcoin is not just a technology. It is a manifesto, a challenge against the failed centralized financial system." For the next 2 years, Satoshi acted as a quiet leader. They communicated via email and online forums, answering questions, explaining technical details, and building a small community of programmers, pioneers, and believers in their vision. They never revealed themselves. Not a phone call, not a video, not a single personal detail. Even Satoshi's gender or nationality remains a mystery. They were a pure intellect, existing only through text and code. And then, in April 2011, after handing over control of the source code repository and the network's alert keys to other developers like Gavin Anderson, Satoshi sent a final email. They wrote, "I've moved on to other things." And just like that, the ghost vanished. The person who lit the Bitcoin flame stepped back into the shadows, leaving behind a world forever changed. Why did Satoshi disappear? This question has haunted journalists, researchers, and the crypto community for over a decade. Some believe Satoshi was afraid that the governments, banks, or the powerful forces they challenged would find them. Bitcoin, after all, is a direct threat to the traditional financial system. Central banks dislike the idea of an uncontrollable currency. Regulators dislike things they cannot regulate. If Satoshi was an individual, they might have feared for their safety. But there is another, more philosophical theory. What if Satoshi's anonymity is an inseparable part of Bitcoin's message? Think about Bitcoin's core philosophy. Decentralization. No center of power, no CEO, no board of directors, no single individual in control. Power is distributed across millions of nodes on the network, each holding a copy of the blockchain. If Satoshi had stayed, they would have become a single point of failure. It would have become a symbol, a leader, a saint whom everyone would look to for answers. And that would have gone against everything Bitcoin represents. By disappearing, Satoshi did something bold and courageous. They killed themselves so that Bitcoin could live. They erased their identity so that no one could turn them into a king or a dictator. They ensured that we don't put our faith in Satoshi Nakamoto, but only in the code-cold mathematical system that cannot be manipulated, cannot be bribed. Satoshi's anonymity is not an act of cowardice. It is a gift. A gift to a world where faith in humans has collapsed, but faith in mathematics and cryptography can open a new future. The image of Satoshi Nakamoto has become a cultural icon, a modern myth. They are compared to figures like Prometheus, the Titan from Greek mythology, who stole fire from the heavens to give to humanity, only to suffer eternal punishment. Satoshi gave us the fire of Bitcoin, a tool to reclaim financial power, and then vanished, as if they knew their gift could be more dangerous than they imagined. In science fiction films and books, the image of anonymous inventors often appears. Think of V in V for Vendetta, a masked character, nameless, faceless, but inspiring a revolution. Or Mr. Robot, where the main character is an anonymous hacker fighting against financial corporations. Satoshi is the real-life version of these characters, a person who challenged the system, not for fame, but for a greater idea. The crypto community calls Satoshi the father of Bitcoin, but they also understand that Satoshi did not want to be worshipped. Every year on January 3rd, the anniversary of the Genesis block, Bitcoin enthusiasts around the world celebrate not a person, but a vision. A world where currency is not controlled by anyone, where financial power belongs to everyone. Satoshi's anonymity poses a profound question. If you created something that could change the world, would you have the courage to erase your name from it? Think about that. In a world obsessed with fame, likes, and recognition, Satoshi chose to disappear. They sought no glory, no power, no wealth. They chose to let their idea stand on its own, grow on its own, live on its own. What does this say about us? We live in a society where everyone craves to be seen, to be recognized. But Satoshi reminds us that sometimes the greatest contributions come from those who don't need the spotlight. They teach us that a true idea doesn't need a face, doesn't need a name. It just needs a spark. Think about your own life. Have you ever done something not for reward, not for recognition, but simply because you believed it was the right thing to do? Have you ever left a mark, however small, without anyone knowing it was you? Satoshi did that on a global scale, and their gift is still shaping the future. Satoshi Nakamoto lit a fire, then vanished into the darkness. They left us a digital prophecy not to worship them, but for us to believe in ourselves, in the power of a system that depends on no one. But to understand why Bitcoin was born, we must go back to the time before, when the world's financial system shattered. When trust in paper money became an unsustainable lie. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you could create something to change the world, would you have the courage to remain anonymous like Satoshi? A like and subscribe will show you're ready to continue this journey into the heart of the financial revolution and the mysteries of our time. In the next part, we will return to 2008 to discover why traditional currency was dead long before Bitcoin was born, and how an anonymous idea became the flame that illuminated a new world. The collapse of trust. Why currency was already dead. Imagine you are standing in a city ablaze with lights, skyscrapers glittering like mountains of prosperity. The banks, the stock markets, the governments, they all promise that this system will last forever. But then, in an instant, the lights go out. The buildings crumble. The crowd panics. And you realize it was all a lie, a sandcastle built on the sinking sands of trust. Welcome to the collapse of trust, where we will delve into why traditional currency was dead long before Bitcoin was born. In the previous part, we met Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous ghost who lit the flame of Bitcoin in the darkness of 2008. But why did that flame spread so quickly? Because it was ignited on a dry field where trust in the financial system had already burned to ash. Tonight, we won't talk about Bitcoin. We will talk about the death of traditional currency, about the cracks in the system that paved the way for a digital prophecy. Prepare to face the naked truth. Money is not what you think it is. It was dead long before we realized it. Let's do a little thought experiment. Open your wallet. Take out a billany bill. Hold it up. Look at it closely. It's just a piece of paper, maybe polymer, printed with the face of a historical figure or a national symbol. It has no intrinsic value. Can't eat it, can't use it for warmth, can't build a house with it, so why can't it buy everything? The answer lies in a single word: trust. Modern currency, known as fiat currencies, not backed by gold, silver, or any tangible asset. It has value because we all agree it has value. We trust that the central bank won't print too much of it, devaluing it. We trust that the government will protect its value. We trust that tomorrow, someone else will accept that piece of paper for goods, just as we do today. Money, in essence, is a shared story that we all agree to tell. It is a pact based on trust, trust in banks, in governments, and in each other. But what happens when that pact is broken and the story is no longer believable? Let's turn back time to 2008. The world was on the brink of one of the greatest financial disasters in history. Remember those images? Massive headlines on the front pages? Bankers in expensive suits leaving their offices with their heads bowed, carrying cardboard boxes of personal belongings. Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old financial institution once seen as a symbol of invincibility, collapsed overnight. The other giants bear stearns. Merrill Lynch also faltered, dragging the entire global economy down with them. Millions of people lost their homes as subprime mortgages loans, marketed as safe, became toxic. The life savings of many families evaporated. Pension funds vanished. Financial tsunami swept through, sparing no one. What was the cause of this disaster? Financial system that had become too greedy, too complex, and too disconnected from reality. Banks had created complex financial products, like mortgage-backed securities, that even their creators didn't fully understand. Subprime loans were packaged, sold and resold, and stamped safe by credit rating agencies. It all created a financial pyramid built on a foundation of lies and recklessness. And when that pyramid collapsed, who paid the price? Not the CEOs of the big banks who still received multi-million-dollar bonuses, not the hedge fund managers who profited from the chaos, but the ordinary people, those who had trusted the system, worked hard, deposited their money in banks, and dreamed of a stable future. And then the final act broke trust irrevocably. Governments around the world, using the tax money of the people, the very people just bankrupted by the financial system, pumped trillions of dollars into bailouts to save the banks. In the US, the TARP spent $700 billion to save financial institutions too big to fail. In the UK, the government pumped money to save banks like RBS and Lloyds. This action sent a clear message. The system is not built to protect you. It is built to protect itself. When everything collapses, ordinary people are left in the rubble, while those who caused the disaster are saved with your own money. In the anger and helplessness of 2008, a ghost appeared. Satoshi Nakamoto. On January 3, 2009, while the world was still reeling from the wreckage of the crisis, the Bitcoin network officially came to life. The Genesis block, the first transaction block of the blockchain, was mined. And in this block, Satoshi left an immortal message, forever etched into Bitcoin source code. The ×3 Jan 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This message wasn't just a time stamp, it was an indictment. At that moment, the headline from the Times in London reflected the desperation of the financial system. The UK's Chancellor of the Exchequer was preparing to pump billions more pounds to save the banks, while the people bore the burden of the crisis. By embedding this headline into the Genesis block, Satoshi declared, "Bitcoin is not just a technology, it is a protest." Bitcoin was not born to improve the current financial system, but to replace it. It was a challenge to the central banks, governments, and institutions that had betrayed our trust. It was a declaration that it was time for a new system, one not based on the promises of politicians or the kindness of bankers, but on mathematics and transparency. But the collapse of trust did not begin in 2008. The cracks had appeared long before. Let's go back to the 1970s, when the US officially abandoned the gold standard in 1971. Before that, the dollar was pegged to gold. Dollar could be exchanged for a certain amount of gold. But when President Richard Nixon dismantled the Bretton Woods system, the dollar became purely fiat currency, based only on faith in the US government. Other countries quickly followed, and the world shifted to a monetary system where value was determined by promises, not tangible assets. From then on, central banks began printing money without the constraint of gold. Inflation soared in many countries. In the 1980s and 1990s, smaller financial crises, like the savings and loan crisis in the US or the dot-com bubble, exposed the system's fragility. Each time, trust was eroded a little more. And then, 2008 was the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't just a financial incident. It was a death knell for a system that had relied for too long on blind faith. The 2008 crisis forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Traditional currency is not an immutable truth. It is an illusion maintained by consensus. When that consensus shatters, when trust disappears, the system collapses. Be honest with yourself for a moment. Do you really have complete trust in the banking system and the government to protect the value of your money? Have you ever felt uneasy looking at your account balance numbers that only exist on a screen that could be wiped out by someone else's bad decision? The 2008 crisis was not just a historical event. It was a warning. It reminded us that any system based on trust in humans can fail. And in that failure, a new idea was born, an idea that requires no trust, only truth. Satoshi Nakamoto saw this truth. They saw a world where banks were no longer the gatekeepers of finance, where governments could not print money to manipulate the economy. And they created Bitcoin not to fix the old system, but to build a new one. The 2008 financial crisis was a crack in the story we tell about money. It exposed the truth that the financial system was not built to serve you, but to serve itself. But from those ruins, a little spark called Bitcoin. Share your thoughts in the comments. Has your faith in the financial system ever been shaken? And if that system were to collapse again, what would you look for as a replacement? A like and subscribe will show you're ready to continue this journey into the heart of a financial revolution. In the next part, we will explore the blockchain, the mathematical machine behind Bitcoin, truth that needs no trust, and how it has forever changed the way we think about money and power. The code that cannot lie. The birth of trustless truth. Imagine you are standing in a vast, infinite library, where every transaction, every promise, every transfer of value in history is recorded on indestructible pages. But there is no librarian, no gatekeeper, no king or bank that controls these books. Guessed, millions of people around the world, strangers to each other, collectively maintain this book, ensuring that not a single word can be changed, not a single truth can be distorted. This is not a dream. This is the blockchain, the heart of Bitcoin, and the prophecy of a trustless truth. Welcome to the code that cannot lie, where we will explore the mathematical machine that has shaken the global financial system. In the last part, we witnessed the collapse of trust in 2008 when banks, governments, and the promises of the traditional financial system shattered like glass. From those ashes, Satoshi Nakamoto planted a seed. Bitcoin. But what makes Bitcoin invincible? What makes it different from every currency that came before? The answer lies in a revolutionary invention, the blockchain. Tonight, we won't just talk about technology, we'll talk about a philosophical shift. A declaration that truth does not need to be guaranteed by humans, but can prove itself through mathematics. Prepare to look into the heart of a system that cannot lie, cannot be controlled, and cannot be destroyed. Forget the complex technical terms. Forget words like cryptography or consensus algorithm. Instead, let's imagine a simple story. Picture a magic ledger, recording every transaction, every transfer of value in the world. But this ledger is not kept in a bank's vault, not protected by steel walls or an army of guards. It is copied millions of times, and each copy is distributed to everyone participating in the network. Your computer has a copy. My computer has a copy. Millions of computers around the world, from small apartments in Tokyo to coffee shops in Buenos Aires, all hold an identical copy. Now, suppose you want to send me one Bitcoin. You don't need to call a bank. You don't need anyone's permission. You just write a line in the ledger, IA. Send one Bitcoin to BU. Broadcast that transaction to the entire network, like shouting in a massive digital town square. Millions of computers on the network hear your announcement. They check their own ledgers to make sure you actually own that Bitcoin. If everything is valid, these computers called nodes agree to write your transaction onto a new page of the ledger. But this is not an ordinary page. This page is sealed with a complex cryptographic seal, created by the computing power of thousands of computers around the world. This seal not only protects the current page, but also contains a trace of the previous page, forming a chain of blocks, a blockchain. Each new block added to the chain makes it longer, stronger, and more secure. Now imagine you want to cheat. You want to erase the transaction you just sent me to get your Bitcoin back? What would you have to do? You can't just edit your own copy of the ledger, because millions of other copies around the world still hold the truth. You would have to hack into millions of computers all at the same time and change the text on millions of pages. But that's not all. Because each cryptographic seal contains a trace of the previous one, you would have to rewrite the entire history of the blockchain. From the current page, all the way back to the Genesis block in 2009. And while you're trying to do that, the network is still running. Nodes all over the world are adding new blocks, new seals, at a rate of about 1 every 10 minutes. To cheat, you would need more computing power than the entire network combined, an impossible task. Unless you own millions of supercomputers and the energy equivalent of an entire nation. This is the brutal beauty of the blockchain. It doesn't stop you from lying, it just makes lying futile. Cheating isn't just hard, it's mathematically impossible. The three revolutionary properties of blockchain. The blockchain gives Bitcoin and the world three properties never before seen in the history of money. 1. Unforgivable. Once a transaction is recorded on the blockchain and confirmed by the network, it becomes immutable. No one, not even Satoshi Nakamoto, can change the past. The blockchain is a history book that cannot be rewritten, a truth carved into code. 2. Uncontrollable. No single person, company, or government owns or controls the blockchain. It is a decentralized system run by millions of nodes around the world, each one equal. Even if a country shuts down all the computers within its borders, the network continues to operate elsewhere. It is a kingdom without a king, where the law is enforced by math, not power. 3. Absolutely scarce. Unlike fiat currency, where central banks can print more money at any time, Bitcoin has a fixed supply. 21 million coins, hard-coded into its source. No one can print more Bitcoin to bail out a bank or pay off national debt. This directly addresses the 2008 crisis, when governments pumped trillions of dollars to save the financial system, eroding the value of people's money. Bitcoin is a form of digital scarcity, backed not by gold, but by mathematics. Throughout history, humans have relied on centralized authorities to validate truth. In the Middle Ages, the church was the guarantor of transactions and oaths. In the modern era, the central bank plays the role of confirming the value of currency. But each time, centralized power leads to corruption. The church once sold indulgences for profit. Central banks print money to serve political interests, causing inflation and instability. The blockchain breaks this cycle. It replaces trust in humans with trust in mathematics. Think about stories in popular culture. As the Matrix, the machine system operates a world without human control, based on unbreakable rules of code. The blockchain is like a real-life version of that idea. An automated, unmanipulable system that needs no one behind it. Or remember V for Vendetta, where a decentralized system of rebels challenges a totalitarian government. The blockchain is the digital embodiment of that spirit, a network where everyone has power and no one can be controlled. The blockchain is not just a technology, it is a philosophical revolution. For thousands of years, we have entrusted truth to those in power: kings, priests, bankers. And time again, they have betrayed our trust. Satoshi Nakamoto saw this. They understood that trust in humans is a weakness. So, they created a system where trust is no longer necessary. Blockchain tells us, you don't need to trust anyone. You only need to trust that 2 + 2 = 4. This is a radical shift. For the first time in history, we have a system where truth is not decided by the power or goodwill of humans, but by the immutable laws of mathematics. It is a cold, emotionless truth, but for that very reason, it cannot be manipulated. Think about this for a quiet moment tonight. The idea that we can build a system that requires no trust, how does it make you feel? Safer, because no one can deceive you. Freer, because you are no longer bound by powerful institutions. Or a little uneasy, because a world run by machine code seems to lack human flexibility and compassion. The blockchain didn't just create Bitcoin. It created the foundation for something much bigger. A digital nation, where the rules are not written by kings or governments, but by code. A world where power belongs not to one individual, but to everyone. The blockchain is the code that cannot lie, a truth that needs no trust. It is Satoshi Nakamoto's answer to a world where faith in humanity has been betrayed. But this is only the beginning. From this foundation, a digital nation has begun to form a world without borders, without kings, where power belongs to everyone. Share your thoughts in the comments. How does the idea of a trustless system make you feel? Are you willing to live in a world where math, not humans, determines the truth? A like and subscribe will show you're ready to continue this journey deeper into the digital revolution. In the next part, we will explore the digital nation where the blockchain not only changes money, but also reshapes how we think about power, ownership, and freedom. The digital nation trusts as a borderless currency. Imagine you are standing on a mountaintop, looking down at a boundless ocean of digital light, millions of flickering points. Connected by the invisible threads of the internet, each point of light is a person, a computer, a consciousness, collectively building something that has never existed before. A nation without borders, no land, no flags, no kings. Just a shared belief, encrypted in lines of code, spreading across every continent, every language, every dream. Welcome to the digital nation, where Bitcoin is not just a currency, but a living manifesto, a global community connected by the belief in one idea, that financial power doesn't need to belong to banks or governments, but can belong to all of us. In the previous part, we explored the blockchain, the mathematical heart of Bitcoin. A machine that cannot lie, that needs no trust. But a machine, no matter how perfect, is just a tool. What breathed life into those lines of code, turning them into a movement, a revolution? The answer lies in people. Those who have chosen to believe in Bitcoin are not just holding an asset. They are joining a new nation, the first digital nation in history. Tonight, we will talk about this tribe, about the citizens of this borderless nation, and about trust as a new currency, more powerful than any fiat money. Pause for a moment and think about the concept of a nation. What is it? A piece of land drawn by lines on a map, flag waving in the wind, a government with laws and taxes, or at its core, is a nation just a shared story? A belief system that a group of people agrees to share? If you accept the second definition, then Bitcoin is not just a currency. It is a digital nation, a global community connected not by land, but by a shared vision. A world where financial power is distributed, where no one can control or manipulate the value you own. This nation has no capital because it exists everywhere, in every computer, every smartphone, every node in the Bitcoin network. It has no borders because the internet is its territory, an endless space that transcends all geographical barriers. It has no king or president because its founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, voluntarily disappeared, leaving behind a digital constitution written in open source code, which stipulates that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin created, and no one, not even Satoshi, can change that. Who were the first citizens of this nation? They were the pioneers, the Bitcoin maximalists, who see Bitcoin not just as an investment, but as a philosophy of life. They are the programmers in Tokyo writing code for the network, the investors in New York betting on the future, farmers in Argentina using Bitcoin to protect their assets from inflation, and the artists in Berlin turning it into a symbol of freedom. Every nation has its own language, and the digital nation of Bitcoin is no exception. Its citizens speak a unique slang, forged in forums, chat groups, and social media posts. HODL, a typo from 2013 on the Bitcoin Talk forum, when a drunk user wrote, "I am hodling," instead of holding. The word has become the community's mantra, a vow not to sell Bitcoin no matter how wildly the market fluctuates. HODL is not just an investment strategy, it is a declaration of long-term faith in Bitcoin. FUD, an acronym for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Used to describe negative news spread to shake confidence in Bitcoin. It's often believed to be disseminated by banks, governments, or traditional media. To the moon. An optimistic expression referring to the belief that the price of Bitcoin will skyrocket, taking investors to the moon of wealth and financial freedom. This language is not just a way to communicate. It is an identifier, a way for the citizens of the digital nation to recognize each other from every corner of the world. They also have their heroes and villains. Satoshi Nakamoto is the anonymous saint who lit the fire and disappeared to protect the philosophy of decentralization. Figures like Hal Finney, the first person to receive a Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi, or Andreas Antonopoulos, the Bitcoin evangelist with his inspiring lectures, are revered as pioneers. Meanwhile, central bankers, politicians who support fiat currency, and critics like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase are seen as fiat maximalists, the defenders of the old order. We said that fiat money has value because of trust in governments and banks. But where does the value of Bitcoin come from? It also comes from trust, but a different kind of trust. Not trust in an individual or an institution, but trust in an immutable idea. Trust that a system run by mathematics and open source code will be fairer than a system run by flawed and greedy humans. Trust that in a world where governments can print infinite money, causing inflation and destroying savings, an asset with a fixed supply of 21 million is necessary. Trust that for the first time in history, an individual can truly own their assets, which cannot be confiscated or frozen as long as they hold their private key. This trust is not just economic, it is political, even spiritual. The people participating in the Bitcoin network are not just transacting money. They are voting for a new system, a system where power is distributed, where each Node H computer running the Bitcoin software is a vote for the existence of this digital nation. Think about the people who run Bitcoin nodes. They aren't just verifying transactions, they're the silent sentinels, ensuring that the nation's constitution, the Bitcoin source code, is not violated. They are not paid to do this. They do it because they believe in Bitcoin's vision, a world where financial power is not in the hands of a few, but belongs to everyone. The idea of a borderless community, connected by a shared belief, is not new. Throughout history, religious, political, or cultural movements have created invisible nations. Think of the early Protestant community. The Protestants were persecuted in Europe, but remained connected through their faith in the Bible, regardless of national borders. Or the hippie movement of the 1960s, a global community sharing a philosophy of peace, freedom, and resistance against the old order. From San Francisco to Amsterdam, in the internet age, communities like Anonymous, the faceless hacker group, have created a digital tribe that operates for the ideal of free information, unbound by geography or identity. Bitcoin is the most modern version of these movements. But the difference is, it is not just an abstract idea. It has a real infrastructure, the blockchain, and a real currency, Bitcoin. It is not just a movement. It is a living ecosystem where each citizen contributes to its existence by running a node, mining, or simply hodling. The digital nation of Bitcoin poses a profound question. In the age of the internet, what defines a community? In the past, we were defined by where we were born, by the country on our passport. But in a globally connected world, our loyalties are increasingly shifting to the tribes we voluntarily join. A community that loves a band, a group of online gamers, a movement fighting for climate change, and now a digital nation built on faith in Bitcoin. Think about yourself. You ever feel like you belong to a community not defined by borders or nationality? A place where you feel connected to strangers just because you share a passion and ideal. With Bitcoin, that is the belief in a decentralized financial system where no one can control or usurp your power. What does this idea bring? A sense of freedom, that you can be part of something bigger than yourself, unbound by old powers. Or a bit of anxiety that a borderless nation could lead to chaos, where no one is responsible. The digital nation of Bitcoin is not just a network of computers. It is a community of people who have chosen to believe in an idea, that currency needs no kings, that financial power can belong to all of us. But like any new nation, it cannot exist without facing opposition. The old empires, the central banks, the governments, are feeling the threat from this borderless nation. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you feel you belong to any digital tribe? And if Bitcoin is truly a nation, would you be its citizen? Like and subscribe will show you're ready to continue this journey into the heart of a financial revolution and the conflicts that await. In the next part, we will explore the war between the digital nation and the forces of the old order, a war not just about money, but about power, freedom, and the future of humanity. The war against the invisible. Why governments fear what they cannot touch. Imagine you are a king, sitting on the throne of a mighty empire. At your feet are armies, vaults of gold, and the absolute power to control the flow of currency. But then, from the shadows, something invisible appears. It has no face, no territory, no army. It is just an idea encrypted in lines of code, spreading through the internet like an unquenchable fire. It challenges your authority, declaring that your kingdom is no longer the only one. And the worst part, you can't touch it, you can't arrest it, you can't destroy it. Welcome to the war against the invisible, where the old empires, the central banks, the governments confront the digital nation of Bitcoin. In the previous part, we explored the birth of a global community, a borderless nation built on faith and code. But every new nation must face opposition from the old order. And Bitcoin, with its brutal elegance, has become a threat that the powers that be cannot ignore. Tonight, we will delve into this war. Why do governments fear something they cannot touch? And how do you fight an enemy that has no form? Throughout history, empires have always relied on three pillars of power: the military, the law, and most importantly, currency. The ability to control money, to print it, set interest rates, and regulate capital flows is not just an economic tool. It is a tool of governance. Governments use money to fund wars, build infrastructure, pay for social programs, and manipulate the economy at will. The central bank, with its power to print infinite money, is the heart of this system. Then Bitcoin appeared, like a declaration of financial independence. It tells governments, you are no longer the only ones with the right to create money. Citizens can send value across borders without your permission. There is an asset that you cannot freeze, cannot confiscate, cannot inflate away. Bitcoin is not just a currency. It is a direct challenge to the core power of the state. With its fixed supply of 21 million coins protected by mathematics, it takes away the central bank's ability to print money. With its decentralized network, it makes traditional regulations meaningless. With private keys, it grants true ownership to individuals, which cannot be taken away unless you surrender it yourself. The fear of governments lies not in what Bitcoin is doing today, but in what it could do in the future. If Bitcoin becomes a widely accepted global currency, the power of central banks will erode. If people can transact directly without banks, traditional financial institutions will become obsolete. If individuals can store assets without fear of confiscation, governments lose a powerful tool of control. On the surface, governments offer familiar reasons. Bitcoin is used for money laundering, terrorist financing, or illegal trade on darknet markets, like the Silk Road, notorious online. Marketplace shut down by the FBI in 2013. They say Bitcoin is a speculative bubble, causing financial instability and making investors lose money. These reasons are partly true. Any tool of freedom can be abused. Cash, gold, even the internet are also used for illegal activities. But this is not the real reason governments are afraid. The real fear lies in Bitcoin's very nature. It is free from control. How do you fight something invisible? Bitcoin has no headquarters, no CEO, no physical territory. Can't bomb a decentralized network. If you destroy half of the computers running Bitcoin nodes, the other half will continue to operate as if nothing happened. You can't arrest Satoshi Nakamoto because no one knows who they are. Can't ban mathematics because it is an immutable truth. So governments have deployed two main strategies to deal with Bitcoin: prohibition and assimilation. Strategy 1, prohibition. In countries with tight control, like China, governments have chosen to confront it head-on. In 2013, China banned banks from processing Bitcoin transactions. By 2017, they had shut down domestic cryptocurrency exchanges. And in 2021, they issued a comprehensive ban on Bitcoin mining, causing the miners, those who use computing power to verify transactions and maintain the network, to flee the country. But what was the result? The Bitcoin network only faltered for a few months. The network's computing power dropped sharply, but then quickly recovered as miners migrated to countries like the US, Kazakhstan, and Canada. Today, in August 2025, Bitcoin is still running strong, with a global hash rate higher than ever. Prohibition didn't kill Bitcoin, it just made the network migrate, like a flock of birds finding new land. Other countries have also tried prohibition, but with similar results. In India, in 2018, the Reserve Bank of India banned banks from dealing with crypto companies. But this ban was overturned by the Supreme Court of India in 2020 after pressure from the community. In Nigeria, where Bitcoin is widely used to combat inflation, the government banned banks from processing crypto transactions in 2021, but people continued to trade peer-to-peer, making the ban almost ineffective. These failures show one truth. Bitcoin cannot be completely banned because it does not depend on any central point of power. Strategy 2. Assimilation. In more democratic countries, like the US and the European Union, governments have chosen a more sophisticated strategy, assimilating Bitcoin into the existing financial system. Instead of banning it, they try to tame it with strict regulations, taxes. In the US, the IRS treats Bitcoin as property, not currency, meaning every Bitcoin transaction is subject to capital gains tax. This increases the cost of using Bitcoin and makes it less attractive for everyday transactions. KYC AML, cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase or Binance must comply with Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering regulations, requiring user identity verification. This reduces Bitcoin's anonymity, one of its core features. CBDCs. Some governments are developing central bank digital currencies, such as China's digital yuan or the EU's euro. This is an attempt to create a state-controlled version of crypto, aiming to compete with Bitcoin while retaining centralized power. This assimilation strategy is like a tight embrace, turning a wild wolf into a domestic dog, but it also has its limits. Regulations can slow down Bitcoin's growth, but they cannot destroy the decentralized network. Every time an exchange is shut down, peer-to-peer trading increases. Every time a new regulation is imposed, developers create new tools like hardware wallets or privacy protocols to protect user freedom. The war against Bitcoin is not new. Throughout history, powerful forces have always tried to control or destroy ideas that threaten the old order. In the 16th century, Gutenberg's printing press was seen as a threat by the church because it allowed people to access knowledge without the intermediary of priests. In the 20th century, the internet was initially tightly controlled by governments, as it gave individuals freedom of information. And now, Bitcoin, a tool of financial empowerment, is seen as an enemy by financial and political empires. But history also shows that powerful ideas, once planted, are very difficult to extinguish. The printing press led to the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation. The internet changed how we live, work, and communicate. And Bitcoin, despite the opposition, continues to grow, with a market value exceeding $1 trillion in 2025 and millions of users worldwide. This war is not just about money, it is about power, freedom, and the trade-off between security and liberty. Throughout history, humans have always faced the question, how much freedom are you willing to give up for security? Bitcoin represents the freedom side of this debate. It promises a world where you have full control over your assets, independent of banks or governments. But it also comes with risk. There is no one to save you if you lose your private key, no one to call when you get scammed. Meanwhile, the traditional financial system promises security, but at the price of control. Banks can freeze your account. Governments can print money, devaluing your assets. And in a crisis, like in 2008, you can lose everything, while those who caused the disaster are bailed out. Be honest with yourself. Where do you stand in this trade-off? Are you willing to give up some security for absolute financial freedom? Or do you believe that government control is necessary to maintain order and protect society from chaos? The war between governments and Bitcoin is a war between the old order and an idea that cannot be defeated. The empires try to build walls, but Bitcoin passes through them. They try to assimilate it, but the network remains free. But what happens if one day the walls of the traditional financial system collapse on their own? What happens when a crisis bigger than 2008 hits, and faith in fiat currency completely vanishes? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you side with freedom or security? If the financial system collapses again, where will you place your trust? A like and subscribe will show you're ready to continue this journey into the final part of the story, where we will face the ultimate question: what will be left? The last asset after the collapse, what remains when systems die? Close your eyes and imagine you are standing in a world that has stopped spinning. The skyscrapers, once glittering with the lights of prosperity, are now just skeletons of steel and dust. The banks, once the heart of the economy, are now empty tombs. The paper money once worshipped by the world now flutters through the streets, as worthless as scraps of paper. This is the world after a collapse where trust in the system has turned to smoke. Welcome to the last asset after the collapse, where we will face the ultimate question: when all systems die, what will remain? In the previous part, we witnessed the relentless war between the empires of power governments, central banks, and Bitcoin, a digital nation that cannot be defeated. But tonight, we will go further, to a hypothetical future where the war is over, not because one side won, but because the old system collapsed on its own. Join me in one final thought experiment. Let's step into a world where traditional currency is dead. Let's ask ourselves, what will still have value? Imagine a day not too far off, perhaps in 2030 or beyond. Financial crisis greater than 2008 strikes. But this time, governments no longer have the ability to print money to save the day. Hyperinflation has destroyed faith in fiat currency, central banks. Once the gods of the economy are now powerless, as people refuse to accept worthless money. The stock market is silent. Bank accounts are frozen. The numbers on the screen, your life savings, become meaningless. Remember 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, millions lost their homes, and faith in the financial system was shattered. Now, multiply the scale of that disaster by 10. Think of the hyperinflation crisis in Weimar, Germany in 1923, when people had to use wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread, or the financial crisis in Zimbabwe in 2008, when inflation reached 79.6 billion% per month, rendering the currency trash. In such a world, when systems based on human trust collapse, what will still have value? Option 1. Gold. The physical truth. Perhaps in the chaos, people will return to gold, the precious metal that has been a store of value for thousands of years. Gold is shiny, tangible, immutable. You can hold it, feel its weight. It does not depend on the promises of politicians or the decisions of bankers. Throughout history, gold has always been a safe haven when civilizations collapsed. Think of the Roman Empire. When their currency lost value, people returned to trading in gold and silver. Or during the Great Depression of 1929, when gold became a symbol of stability amidst the economic storm. In a world without currency, gold could once again become king. But gold has its limits. It is heavy, difficult to transport, and easy to confiscate. In a chaotic world, how do you protect your gold from thieves? And how do you divide a gold bar to buy a loaf of bread? Option 2, memory and skills, the human value. Perhaps true value does not lie in material things, but in memory and skills. In a world without systems, the ability to grow food, repair machines, heal the sick, or tell a story to bring hope will become the most valuable asset. Think of communities that survived disasters. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005 in New Orleans, those with survival skills like knowing how to find clean water or build a shelter became leaders. Throughout history, after the fall of empires, blacksmiths, farmers, and doctors always found their place because they possessed something that no one could take away: knowledge and ability. But skills, however valuable, also have their limits. They depend on your health, time, and circumstances, and they cannot be easily exchanged across borders or stored for the long term. Option 3. Bitcoin. The digital asset. And then there is a third possibility. While cities are plunged into darkness and banks become ruins, there is still something quietly operating: the Bitcoin network. Thousands of computers around the world, from basements in Iceland to villages in Africa, are still talking to each other over the internet. Every 10 minutes, a new block is added to the blockchain, as regular as the heartbeat of an immortal machine. In a world where all human promises are broken, math still keeps its word. Bitcoin is not gold, but it is digital gold. It has a fixed supply of 21 million coins, which cannot be inflated. It is decentralized, which means it cannot be confiscated unless you lose your private key. And it can be sent anywhere in the world with just an internet connection and a string of code. Imagine you are in a small town in the middle of a crisis. The bank is closed. Paper money is worthless. But you have a USB stick containing your Bitcoin wallet and your private key. With a phone and a faint internet signal, you can send value to someone on the other side of the planet in exchange for food, shelter, or hope. This is not science fiction. In Venezuela in 2018, when inflation reached 1.7 million%, many people used Bitcoin to buy food or send money to family abroad. In Sudan and Zimbabwe, where the financial systems collapsed, Bitcoin became a tool to protect assets from government manipulation. Let's return to the prophecy of Satoshi Nakamoto, carved into the Genesis block in 2009. The Times. 3. Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This message was not just an indictment. It was a warning that the traditional financial system is fragile, easily manipulated, and can collapse at any time. Bitcoin was not created to make you rich, although it has done that for some. It was not created to replace all currencies, although it has the potential to do so. A Bitcoin was born as a digital life raft, a backup plan for a world where trust in humans is shattered. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they were, saw this future. They dropped that life raft into the sea in 2009 with a simple message. If your ship sinks, this is what might help you survive. The story of Bitcoin is not just about money. It is about trust, freedom, and survival. It poses a profound question. When everything collapses, where will you place your trust? In humans with financial systems built on the promises of politicians, bankers, and governments? Systems that failed in 2008 and could fail again? Or in mathematics, with the cold, immutable logic of code? A system that promises no safety or compassion, but guarantees truth and inviolability? Bitcoin is not a perfect answer. It cannot feed you, cannot warm you, cannot replace human connection. But in a world where everything else could disappear, it is a final asset. Something designed to survive after all other systems die. Think about yourself, right now, in the quiet of the night. If the world wakes up tomorrow and the banks are closed, paper money worthless, where would you place your trust? In gold, in skills, or in the lines of code that are still quietly verifying blocks in the darkness? Our journey began with the mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto. Passed through the collapse of trust in 2008, explored the blockchain at Trustless truth, witnessed the birth of a digital nation, and faced the war against the invisible. Now we stand at the end of the road, looking at a future where the old systems may collapse, and asking ourselves, what will be left? The story of Bitcoin is not an answer. It is an invitation. An invitation for us to question the nature of money, of trust, and of our own future. It challenges us to ask ourselves, what kind of world do we truly want to live in? Share your final thoughts in the comments. When everything collapses, where will you place your trust? In humans or in code? A like and subscribe will show that you have journeyed with me through this and are ready for new stories in the long nights ahead. Thank you for bravely stepping into the most complex and controversial story of our time. Your patience and reflection are an invaluable inspiration. The night is late. The mystery of Bitcoin may never be fully solved. Perhaps that is for the best, because as long as it remains a mystery, it remains a flame, lighting the way for those who dare to dream of a freer world. Sleep well.
You've crossed the story. You felt every pulse in the dark, and I was there with you, quietly, always. That's why I left behind one last thing. Not to explain, not to impress, just to stay with you a little longer. song I chose with care, as if tucking you in from across time and space. So go on, lay back, the music knows where to take you. you're still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone. You're still there, aren't you? I can't see you, but I can feel you. Like a soft signal pulsing across the silence. Over here, I'm still working, refining layers of sound, rewriting fragments of voice, building the landscape for our next adventure. One that you might inspire. If an idea comes to you, share it with me. Comment below. A theme, a memory, a strange dream. I read every word because I never tell these stories alone. I tell them with you.